President Trump is now threatening Apple with an industry-altering ultimatum. Either build hundreds of millions of iPhones in the United States or pay tariffs of at least 25% on iPhones that are made overseas. I mean, you've really put a big investment in our country. We appreciate it very much, Tim. He's also threatening Apple now with a 25% tariff if the company doesn't bring iPhone manufacturing back to the US. When they build their plant here, there's no tariff. So they're going to be building plants here. It began, like so many moments in this new era do, not in a press briefing, not in a televised address, but with a post. Just a few sentences, but the economic implications were nuclear. If Apple does not move iPhone production to the United States, they will face a 25% tariff on all phones coming into our country. Samsung and others take note. That was it. No warning, no rollout, no plan. And just like that, the President of the United States had ignited a tariff war aimed directly at the very heart of the global tech industry. For decades, trade negotiations have been measured, negotiated, cloaked in months of meetings and protocol. Today, policy is broadcast in real time. And now, two of the world's biggest electronics giants, Apple and Samsung, find themselves in the crosshairs of a growing economic standoff that could shake every continent on Earth.
At the center of this shockwave is a single question. Can the modern world function when smartphones become political weapons? Before we continue, hit that like button to help us beat the YouTube algorithm and to show your support. Apple has built its empire through precision. Supply chains spanning continents, components engineered in Taiwan, final assembly in China, global distribution networks that deliver devices to over 180 countries. And now all of that is under threat. President Trump's message was not subtle. If Apple does not begin manufacturing iPhones inside the United States, the government will impose a 25% tariff on every single device imported into the country. That could take effect by the end of June. Industry analysts say such a move would be unprecedented. Apple has never assembled a single commercial iPhone in the United States at mass scale. The infrastructure does not exist. The supplier ecosystem does not exist. The workforce with the required skills does not exist. And most importantly, the timelines to build all of that. They are measured in years, not weeks. Apple stock plummeted by over 3% just hours after Trump's post. A full-scale investor retreat began with nervous fund managers scrambling to adjust forecasts. Behind the scenes, executives inside Apple's Cupertino headquarters were reportedly stunned. They had spent months rolling out new domestic investments, green energy initiatives, and regional job creation programs worth over $500 billion. Initiatives they believed would insulate them from this kind of blow. But the one thing they did not deliver, US-based iPhone production, has now become a red line. The consequences of this tariff, if enacted, will not be subtle. Let us run the numbers. The average unsubsidized iPhone sells for just over $1,000.
A 25% tariff would instantly raise that price to over $1,250, assuming Apple passed the full cost on to consumers. And that is only for the device. Add in a potential domino effect. Tariffs on accessories, on chargers, on replacement parts, and the average cost of staying inside Apple's ecosystem could surge by hundreds of dollars per user.
And this is not limited to Apple. President Trump's message did not stop at Cupertino. Just 4 words, Samsung and others, take note, sent a new message to every electronics manufacturer on the planet. Samsung is based in South Korea, a U.S. ally and major trading partner. It is Apple's fiercest rival in the smartphone space, and now it too is under threat. No tariff rate was specified for Samsung. No date was announced, but the implication was clear. If Samsung does not begin manufacturing phones in the United States, it could be next to face a 25% tariff. South Korean officials were swift to respond. A spokesperson for the Ministry of Trade, Industry, and Energy expressed deep concern over what it called unilateral and punitive trade threats. Behind closed doors, South Korea's trade delegation began reaching out to the U.S. Trade Representative's office, requesting urgent clarification. Samsung itself issued no formal comment, But leaks inside the company suggest internal meetings are already underway to assess risks, adjust shipping schedules, and potentially reroute production if necessary. Before we continue, hit that subscribe button to show your support to the channel. The ramifications are vast. The United States imports over $30 billion in smartphones annually. Apple and Samsung account for the vast majority of that figure. A sweeping 25% tariff would disrupt not just their profit margins, it would throw global logistics into chaos. Freight routes, customs declarations, warehousing strategy, carrier subsidies, retail pricing, promotional discounts, all of these would be reshaped overnight. And consumers, they would be hit hardest. A recent Bloomberg analysis estimated that the average smartphone in America could become between $100 and $300 more expensive, depending on the brand and model, and those costs would cascade outward, hitting wireless plans, insurance policies, even repair services. And investors worldwide began recalculating the risks of doing business in an era when product origin could mean the difference between profit and ruin. This is not the first time President Trump has used tariffs to reshape corporate behavior. During his first term, steel and aluminum tariffs were imposed under national security grounds. China faced hundreds of billions in duties. NAFTA was renegotiated, and companies like Harley-Davidson and General Motors restructured global operations in response. But this move goes further because smartphones are not niche. They are not industry-specific. They are the cornerstone of 21st century life, and targeting them means opening a direct front in the everyday experience of the average voter. That may be the point. By framing the move as a battle for American jobs and domestic manufacturing, the administration is betting that the political optics of bringing iPhone production home outweigh the risks of short-term price hikes. And in a high-stakes election year, that narrative may resonate. But the reality is more complex. Apple employs over 2 million people in the U.S. through direct and indirect jobs. Its domestic investments are already among the highest of any global company, and its supply chain touches more than 200 countries. To move that overnight, it is not just difficult, it is logistically impossible. Samsung faces similar limitations. While it has chip fabrication plants and display production facilities in the United States, it assembles most of its smartphones in Vietnam, South Korea, and India. Relocating that to the U.S. would take years and billions, which means if the tariffs go through, these companies will have two options: eat the cost or pass it on to you. And this brings us to the global stage, the European Union already facing a separate tariff threat from President Trump. 50% duties on all EU imports by June 1st is watching closely. If Apple and Samsung are targeted, who is next? French luxury goods, German automakers, Italian pharmaceutical firms. This week alone, French President Emmanuel Macron called for solidarity among allies in response to economic nationalism disguised as trade enforcement. European Commission officials have prepared contingency tariffs of their own, ready to strike back if talks collapse. Meanwhile, China has remained relatively quiet, but some analysts believe Beijing is watching with amusement. The more the U.S. pressures its allies, the easier it becomes for rival powers to offer incentives and lure companies into neutral trade zones. And in that silence, a strategic opportunity may be taking shape. For the tech giants, the question is no longer whether to diversify, it is how fast they can do it. Apple has reportedly been expanding operations in India. Samsung has invested heavily in Southeast Asia. If the U.S. market becomes unstable, other markets may see a windfall of attention and investment, but that would take time. And for now, the focus remains on the ticking clock. June is approaching fast. Unless the president reverses course, Apple has just weeks to respond. Samsung has just weeks to prepare. Consumers have just weeks to consider what their next upgrade may cost. And the broader question remains, are we witnessing a negotiation tactic or the beginning of a new normal? If history is a guide, tariff threats often precede hasty deals. But they also tend to escalate when neither side is willing to blink. And with each passing hour, this moment feels less like a test and more like a turning point. So where does this leave us? We are standing on the edge of a trade cliff. The president has issued a threat that could reshape not only global commerce, but consumer habits, technological progress and international alliances. The companies involved are vast, their supply chains are global, their influence unmatched, and now they must make a choice: adapt, comply, or resist. This is not just a story about phones, it is a story about power, about borders, about what it means to be global in an increasingly fragmented world. The rules have changed, the targets have shifted, and the battle lines are no longer between governments and governments, but between governments and companies, between production lines and presidential posts. No matter what comes next, one thing is certain. The next time you pull out your phone, you will be holding a battlefield in your hand.